Okay, well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming. I really appreciate y'all being here. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Abigail, for all of the tech support up there. All right, give it up for the tech crew, without which we cannot do this. And most of all, give it up for Jean Albanese, my mom. She really put this thing together. I mean, you know, I get up here and present it, but she's the one who really is the brains behind this. And so with that, all right, so hands up. Who's interested in the English language? Pretty much everybody, right? Okay, who is interested in history, particularly medieval history, particularly military history? Okay. How many embroiderers, stitchers, arts and crafters? Oh, wow. All right. I'm proud. I love this. How many interested in politics and propaganda and how the news is presented? All right. So that's what this presentation is all about. And you'll notice how things change, how they stay the same. Right? So this whole thing started when my mother, Jean Albanese, went to Normandy. And she went there on a business trip, and she stopped by, obviously, the World War II Normandy beaches is what we think of. And she said, let me pop by this place, Bayeux. What's going on over there? And she saw this tapestry. She said, oh, that's really cool. You know, my daughter, she's interested in needlework. She's interested in medieval history and all that. You know, let me pick up a few knickknacks, you know, tea towels and a book and all that. And I got into looking at this, and I said, well, you know, that's really cool. I like this thing. And I got more and more into it. And I'm like, can I do this? Can I do this at home? You know, or do they have needlepoint or embroidery kits? And so it happens that they do. And, oh, I forgot. Who's interested in genealogy? Right, who's related to who, right? It turns out that a lot of people in this audience are descended from people who experienced this thing we call 1066 and all that, the Norman invasion, the Battle of Hastings. Okay, so what is the Bayeux Tapestry? What is it? It's a long scrolled embroidery. Okay, it's about 75 yards long. Okay, think about a football field. Okay, that's a very long punt return. And while we're speaking football, Mom is the brains behind the operation. If I see something wrong, she's got an eye for detail. She will throw a yellow penalty flag on the field if there's laundry. You know, if we mess something up, she's on it. It's only 20 inches wide though. Like it's almost like if you look at the news scroll, you know, the chions that go across, that's basically what it is. 72 scenes. It details the surroundings of the Battle of Hastings, which is October 14th, 1060, coming up on the anniversary. And it probably served as a propaganda tool. This thing was portable. They would roll it up and present it to people who needed to hear the news, and then move it from town to town, because it didn't end with William just conquering in Hastings. It didn't end with that. They had to go make their case. There were still people out there feeling like, well, I'm not so sure, that doesn't seem legit. He had to go from town to town, and so they would roll it out and tell people, this is why. It's a cartoonish depiction. It's very simple. It was meant for your average Joe to be able to look at it and say, oh, I see it, even if you can't read. It was written in Latin, the chirons, but your average guy could look at that and say, okay, I get it. And it was written in a very even-handed way. So like the Saxons would see one thing, the Normans would see another. So it was very even-handed. It's, what do you call it, Rorschach test? You see what you want to see? Okay, so here is what we're talking about. Everybody knows, right? King Harold of England was invaded and defeated by the French Norman Duke, William the Conqueror, okay? This is what happened. Somebody won, somebody lost. So, now, getting to the English language. The Norman conquest changed the English language. English is a blended language. That's why it's so hard to understand, because the rules are all different, depending upon what route that word took. The Norman conquest added about 10,000 new words. English is based on Anglo-Saxon roots, but it has integrated French Latin-based words. So, we eat, we dine, we sweat, we perspire. We are smart, we are intelligent, We start, we commence, right? All means the same thing. So let's do a sing-along. All right? You probably all know this one. Join in me if you can. Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago and it went right to my head. Wherever I may roam, on land or sea or foam, you will always hear me singing this song. Show me the way to go home. All right, everybody knows that, right? Very familiar. Well done. Give yourselves a hand. Okay. Now I'm going to sing it again, but you'll hear a big difference. Indicate the way to my habitual abode. I'm fatigued and I desire to retire. I imbibed an alcoholic beverage approximately 60 minutes ago, and it went directly to my cerebellum. Wherever I may perambulate, on land or sea or atmospheric vapor, you will always hear me chanting this rhapsody. Indicate the way to my habitual abode. Same song, different language. Sounded way different, and this is why everybody learning English gets really confused. Okay. So, and there was an air of sophistication, right? You know, these Norman nobles, they came in with their fancy French words. Right? So they became the Norman. The Normans became the Saxon superiors. The French was understood as the language of the aristocracy. The conquest changed the political landscape, introducing feudalism, and the farmers lost their freedoms, right? So, like, you couldn't just farm your land anymore. You were tied to the land, and you had to go to your superiors to ask to get married or ask to move. Power became more centralized. It was under European papal control. This whole Brexit thing that we talk about is nothing new. They've been trying to spit themselves with that system a long time ago. Initially, French was considered as pretentious, but ultimately it became incorporated. Another Latin-based word. All right, so what is Normandy? Where do we think of Normandy? Where is Mom going when she went on vacation? Well, it all starts in the Viking invasion. So if you look at the 8th century through the 11th century, all right, so Scandinavia is not such a great place to live. You can't farm it. Maybe you could fish it, but basically they got really good at building boats, fishing, and invading other people because they didn't have a whole lot they could do there. And so as part of the invasion, they did find their way into the northern part of France here, in Normandy, right here, and they invaded. They were going hither and yon, but they landed here. And this is a close-up of Normandy here. You will see in the Tapestry, we talk about Dole, we talk about Saint-Michel, of course Bayeux, and Rouen was the capital of Normandy. And then you don't think of Viking invasions as being like inland problems, you think of it as a coastal thing, but no, these boats they were able to build were very short drafted, and they were able to really go upriver and penetrate into major parts of France, including and especially Paris, which that caused problems. So this is an ancestor who's related to Rolf. Hands up, right? Okay, few people. This is a Viking invader, Rolf, right? And he made a series of invasions into Normandy. And he really didn't want to keep doing it. He was getting tired. He wanted to settle down. They weren't invading because they wanted to, because they kind of had to, but they wanted to settle down. And the King of France, Charles the Simple, they call him that, Charles the Simple. He wanted the Viking invasions to stop, and he ran out of money. Like he was trying to fight him off, and he just ran out of money. And it turns out that in these days, if you run out of money, you actually have to stop. You can't like print it anymore, you know. So they made a deal, okay? They made a deal, and the deal was the Treaty of Saint-Cyr-Epte, okay? So the Treaty of Saint-Cyr-Epte says, okay, Rolf, I know you're tired. I'm going to give you the entire part of northern France. You can use it. You can come in, you can settle on certain conditions. You will thwart off any further invasions from your buddies. You will settle down and convert to Catholicism and change your name to Rollo so I can pronounce it. And most importantly, you will owe me fealty. So, and this is, and you think about the fall of the Roman Empire, like where everything was kind of top down and they had all this structure. They're still coming out of the fall of the Roman Empire. This is still the Dark Ages. So everything is all caught up into warring factions, and loyalty and fealty is everything. You've got to swear an oath, and you've got to promise to be loyal to me. So in exchange for that, he gets Normandy, and so he becomes the first Duke of Normandy. Okay, now, fast forward, these are the parents of William the Conqueror. So Hrolf's had a great-great-grandson, and this is Robert the Magnificent. Isn't it great to be related to a guy named the Magnificent? I love it. Anyway, so there's a whole romance story in here. He fell in love with a beautiful redhead named Herleva, but the problem was she was a commoner, she was the daughter of a tanner, she worked in the dyeing trenches, dyeing wool, and the process used urine. It was like really like elbows deep dirt under the fingernails, a nasty job that she had to do, but God, she was gorgeous and we loved her. And so he sent his buddies out of, this is Falaise Castle where it all took place, and he says, hey, sends his guys out, hey, can you like fetch that girl for me? Yeah, she's really cute. And so she says, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, okay, but there's only one thing. You're not going to sneak me in through the back door. You will have me be an acknowledged girlfriend, common law wife, whatever you want to call it. That's the way the Vikings did it. Like, you didn't really have to get married, per se. As long as it was an open relationship and everybody knew where the paternity lay, that was accepted. But, we're dealing with Vikings, we're dealing with French. Things are a little bit different. There's still a blended culture there. But anyway, this is the romance that took place. And so she accepted, they had a relationship, it was open, and 2 children bore out of this relationship. We have William the Bastard and Adelaide. And I am not, and these guys in the front are not descended directly through William, but we are through Adelaide. That's your great-great, how many of your great-grandma? All right, so there we are, and things being complicated. Robert can't really marry her later because she doesn't have any money, she doesn't have any status, he's politically ambitious, but he doesn't want to ditch her off. He doesn't just fob her off, right? So what he does is he arranges for her to get married to the Viscount. Herluin, thank you. Thanks, Herluin, yep. That marriage resulted in Bishop Odo, and Bishop Odo, you'll see him in the tapestry as we move forward. He probably commissioned the tapestry. We don't know, that's not settled. Most historians say that this guy, half-brother of William, was the guy who said, yeah, let's put this on the map. Okay, now, Robert the Magnificent realizes he has 2 children that are of questionable legitimacy, so he goes ahead and he was going to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, as they often did in those times, and before he left, he made sure that he officially acknowledged those children as his. And it's a good job that he did, because on his way home from Jerusalem, he died of fever. So, William the Bastard was legitimized. Okay, now let's cross the pond. Here we have Edward the Confessor. He's the beloved Saxon king of England. He was the son of Ethelred the Unready. If everyone was paying attention in class, you might remember that name. But he was half Norman through his mother, though. His mother was full-on Norman. And there were other remember those Viking invasions? There were further Viking invasions in the north, led by Danish Sven Forkbeard, I love these names. And so there was these invasions that were going on, and so Mom popped Edward down to Normandy to be raised in safety. There was more political stability. He spent probably age 10 to age 40 growing up in the Norman court. So he grew up speaking French, making Norman contacts. So yeah, Saxon kind of, but not really. He was related to William, right? His mother was cousins with William's father. So like, anybody have cousins, right? And do they have kids, right? You know them, that's the relation. First cousin once removed, that's what that is. But the problem with little Edward there is that he did not reproduce. He did not have kids, so it left a power vacuum upon his death. And the other problem is, everybody had in-law problems. Edward had in-law problems. His wife, Edith, was a member of a very powerful Saxon noble family, the Godwinsons. Earl Godwin carved up the map of England for his sons, Harold, Lethwin, Gurth, Toscan, others. So everything was all distributed within powerful Saxon control. So he is surrounded by these guys through his wife. And then his wife, Edith, is one of the few women you'll see in the tapestry. She's the daughter of Earl Godwin, very powerful. In 1066, the whole world falls apart for this poor gal. She loses everything. She loses 4 brothers within a 2-week time frame, no other brothers, and she doesn't have any other access to power. She's just left by herself. But they did let her keep her lands, which was important. They didn't totally screw her over, so to speak. But she lost everything, this poor girl. Okay, so Edward's got his foot in each canoe, right? He's the king, right? And so he's got his wife, Edith, the brother-in-law, Harold, powerful Saxons, the Godwinsons. And on the other side, right, through his mom's side, he's technically illegitimate, but was legitimized, closest eligible blood relative. And so Edward's got a problem. He doesn't have a kid. What's he going to do? How is he going to pass this power off? There are various ways, as king, you would pass this off. One is heirship. That's out. The other is appointing of a departing monarch. So Edward can say, I'm giving it to you. And he can just appoint. And then the other, if he doesn't do that, there's the nobles, the witan. They get together and sort of vote somebody. So election of the witan, election of the nobles is another way to go about it. And the tapestry tells the story of how this whole power struggle took place. So what we see is the confessor's interactions with Harold, Harold's engagement in Normandy under Edward's command. We see Edward's death. We see Harold's hasty coronation, right? And William asserting his claim, not so fast, buddy, asserting his claim to the crown, waging the Battle of Hastings, and, spoiler alert, Harold's ultimate defeat. Okay, so Abigail, let's cut to the video where there is an animated thing on YouTube that people find very fun and interesting, and I invite you to enjoy. You can pull this up at home anytime. frustratingly, that scene is missing. It got tore off somehow. We don't know. We'll get to that later. Thank you, Abigail. Back to the slides. Okay. So we're going to go through it and we're going to look at this thing. So it starts out, the opening scene is Edward is sending Harold to Normandy in 1064. We don't know why, but you can see Edward is sitting there with his crown, he has his scepter, and he's giving Harold a tactile command. He's grabbing him by the hand and saying, I need you to go to Normandy. It does not explore the nature of the mission. And every time you look at a scene, you'll have a Saxon interpretation, you'll have a Norman interpretation. The Norman interpretation is quite simple. He's sending Harold to go tell William he's appointing you the successor on his death. Why he would do that to the most powerful Saxon, I don't buy that argument, but it's open to interpretation. The Saxon version is that Edward is sending Harold there to negotiate a hostage release. As part of Earl Godwin's rebellion, his brother and his nephew were held hostage in the Norman court. And he's like, well, I want to get my guys back. Or maybe it was both. Maybe, okay, we'll negotiate a hostage release, but you're going to have to turn the crown over to the Normans. It doesn't explain the nature of the mission, but anybody looking at it is going to see what they want to see. And so it does appear to be a peaceful mission. You have praying safe passage at Bosham Church. You have them sort of eating and getting ready. And I just love this scene because it showed these shallow draft boats, they waded in their bare feet with their tunics kind of rolled up. And you can see, like, they're carrying little hunting dogs, they're carrying falcons. It does appear to be a peaceful mission, whatever it is, it does appear to be peaceful. You don't see a lot of armaments or anything, so off they go. And what happens? They get blown off course, and we landed on the territory of Count Guy. And you see the anchor here, you see Harold in his bare feet, and what happens? He gets arrested. Probably for ransom, something stupid like that. You know, they were always playing games like that. Oh, you know, you landed on my territory, ha ha, you pay up, that kind of thing. And then Duke William sends his messengers over and says, knock it off. Oh, we don't need this. And so he negotiates with Guy. And this scene is interesting for a lot of reasons. You'll see these little trees, these sort of Celtic woven kind of trees. They separate the scenes. So, chapter. You can see the difference between the dress of who's Saxon and who is Norman. So the Saxons would have a tunic, Normans typically breeches. And then there's one of the very few named characters is a dwarf named Turold. We don't know who he is. He must have been, oh yeah, that guy Turold. Yeah, I heard about him. And you can always tell a Norman, they always shave the back of their heads. So Turold is clearly Norman, usually the back of his head is shaved. We call them skinheads back then. Something's new. It's not. We had skinheads back in the 11th century. And so it does appear that a hostage negotiation is going on here. We have William, we have Harold. Hey, look at this guy. Can we set him free? Possibly. I don't know. He's pointing. He's saying something about someone. And then here's the mystery woman, Elfgifa. Elfgifa, right here. We don't know who Elfgifa is. If anyone figures it out, please let me know. Her name meant gift of the elves. It was a very common Saxon name. So who knows? She's talking, it says here, cleric, and Elfgifa. That's all it says. And so you fill in the blanks. And here she is, Elfgifa, our mystery woman, and the certain cleric. Okay, well anyway, as things move on, William invites Harold to join him in a campaign against Conan. Now, Conan was causing trouble. He was in Brittany. Brittany, it's not Britain, it's in France, it's southwest of Normandy, and he was encroaching upon William's land. And so he asked Harold, hey, while you're here, could you help me out with this whole Conan situation? And, sorry, yeah, I caught it. I know, she was right there. This is, using the wrong clicker. This is Saint Michel, okay? It was a brand new abbey and cathedral that they had just barely built, and you could see it. It's depicted in the tapestry, and the problem with the area that they were fighting in was, if you look at it, you can go to Saint Michel today. It is very swampy. The tides roll in and roll out, and depending on the tide, you could get really caught up in quicksand. And that's what happened. And here we see Harold, an absolute hero, the Saxon hero with his mustache. Saxons generally sported the mustache thing. And here he is, he's rescuing 2 people out of the quicksand. And the legend is that one was a Norman, one was a Saxon, so this is kind of like a patch it up, make it up kind of, we got your homie here, he's cool. And then, so they're going after Conan. I love this, because Conan, he is in Dole, right? In Dole, we saw that on the map. And Conan is just he's escaping, right? Harold and William successfully defeat him in Dole, but he escapes on this little, coming out the window, Rapunzel style. So, yeah. And he hightailed it to Dinah, but they chased him there. And so eventually Conan had to give it up. And the cities in those days were surrounded by walls, and so you really had to have a key to the city, right? Claves? Anybody speak Spanish? Claves? The keys. So he's handing the keys to William on the lance, and they're burning the place down, probably because they couldn't man it, and so they didn't want it to be used for other purposes, so they just burn it and run away, Okay, and to thank Harold for his services, William rewarded him with arms. He receives a hauberk. Hauberk is one of those chain-mail kind of things that they would wear, sort of like a wearable chain link fence, if you will. And he gives him a helmet, and in return for investiture of arms, Harold must owe William an oath of fealty. Remember, loyalty is critical in this world that's just so topsy-turvy coming out of the fall of Rome. So it's very important in the feudal system. And this one is huge. This is the big scene. So Harold swears on the holy relics of the sainted martyrs. The Norman version is Harold is swearing fealty to William as his loyal servant after having been invested with arms. And it is a mortal sin. You break an oath like that, you're done for. Imagine politicians being held to their oaths. They can't break their word. Really? Well, back in those days, you had to keep your word. And the Saxon version is Harold is swearing on the relics under duress. Remember that whole hostage situation? He's worried about getting back. Maybe things didn't break all that well with the hostage release, and he's got to get going. And if an oath is made under duress, it doesn't count. Desperate people tell whatever you want them to hear. So anyway, whatever this oath was, he leaves. And he goes back to Edward in London and saying, okay, here's what went down. And this little guy here, oh, sorry, wrong clicker. You can see another thing that they do is they show the common man in the tapestries, nobles, nobles, all that stuff. you will see this is a construction worker, and they're putting the finishing touches on Westminster Abbey. It was the weather vane. That was the last thing they would put up, the weathercock. And you can see, there it is. He had that built. And this is the sad scene, right? It's a good thing that he made his arrangements, because here is where Edward the Confessor dies. And you can see Edith, his wife, grieving. You can see Stuyvesant. I believe that's Stuyvesant, we're not sure, but probably. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow. They've been up all night. You see a servant boy propping up the pillows. You see that he's wearing his crown, right? So he's still in charge. But again, you see this tactile command. Harold, I need to tell you something. What is he saying? They don't tell you. But the Saxon chroniclers will tell you, he's giving it to you, Harold. He's surrounded by Saxons at this point. The man is trying to die. They probably put pressure on him. The Saxon chronicler said, yes, they did give it to him. And Harold is there, receiving this. And then, et he defunctus est. He has died. And here we have our little fella putting the weather vane up, the weathercock. Here we have Westminster Abbey. And here we have the funeral procession, moving Edward to his final resting place, and the hand of God saying, put him right there. And you can still go there. If you go to Westminster Abbey, you'll see him. He's still where they laid him to rest. And everybody's like, oh boy, did you see that? What happened? The finger's pointing. Did you see that? Did you see that? All this went down on January 5th, which was like the second to last day of Christmas. Now, if you were to be enthroned and coronated, you would have to have it on a feast day, right? So you got 24 hours to get this done by Epiphany. Other than that, you got to wait until Easter, right? So everything moves lickety-split fast. And so what you see is they're coronating him, okay? So we have, here's Harold. And did anybody watch the coronation of Charles? Did anybody? Yeah, just out of curiosity. Yeah. A lot of hands went up. It's the same ceremony. He has the order. He has the crown. He has the scepter. He has the sword of command. And what you see is they are handing him the power. He's not resting it. They are handing him the power. And here's Stuyvesant, okay? Now, a Norman looking at that would say, Stuyvesant? That guy? Wasn't he excommunicated like 5 times? You know, this isn't legit. That guy's a flim-flam. What are you telling me? That this is some kind of legitimate transfer of power? No. Yellow flag? Okay.
Just say that, that they voted him in.
They did, yeah. The Whitmans voted him in.
Voted him in, so...
Yeah. The Whitmans voted him in. That is true. Saxon can say, hey, wait a minute. He gave him the throne by appointing, and the Whitmans voted him in. We got 2 reasons to say why this is legitimate. And okay, well, this is interesting too. Halley's Comet flew over the scene. And in the medieval mind, the celestial orbs, the events going on there, had control over terrestrial events. So if anybody reads their horoscope or whatever, they believed. And Halley's Comet is seen here. And a messenger is telling Harold,